All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sid Wiggs, and I will be presenting today for you. Please mute yourselves if you have not already done so. Be fairly fast-paced, and we'll be moving along. And for transparency, this class is being recorded. So, General Emergency Services. What's it about? Think of this as, well, it's absolutely the first class and qualification in order to be involved in emergency services and civil air patrol. Think of it as obtaining a learner's permit when you're driving. There's going to be a lot of material, and especially for the cadets, a good chunk of it is not going to make sense until you actually have to use some of the information. And the same thing applies to a lot of the senior members as well. You should get familiar with CAP Regulation 60-3 and CAP Regulation 173-3. You can't memorize them, but know where they're at, be familiar with them, and know how to find the information in those. And feel free to try and hit me with any questions you have. I won't have all the answers, but I'll make sure that we can find them and give them to you. All right, now comes the fun part of figuring out. There we go. So, General Emergency Services. We have all of these different components in emergency services. We have missions. That's what everybody thinks about. We have the qualifications. Those are the different specialties and things you have to do to perform in specific duties. Activation, how we get called out to perform. We can't just go, hey, there's such and such on TV, let's go help as Civil Air Patrol. There's sign-in processes, and on the flip side, sign out. Risks involved, who's responsible for what, bloodborne pathogens, negligence, posse comitatus, median standby bystanders, reimbursement, especially for senior members. If we're putting gas in the van, how do we get paid for it? Or are we going to get paid for it? And then partner agencies. And forgive me, I have a new mouse, so I am just flipping this all over the place. So, missions can include search and rescue, both ground and air. And that's what Civil Air Patrol traditionally has been thought of for a very long time, is air searches, followed by ground teams going in and locating it. We're moving more and more to other areas within search and rescue, and different components are moving in that we use. Disaster relief. One could loosely say that all the vaccine clinics and pods, points of distribution that we are covering now, fall under disaster relief. But it also falls under when Puerto Rico had their weather-related issues. We actually deployed teams to go and assist there. Reconnaissance ranges anywhere from, again, in disaster relief on photo missions, taking pictures of the damage and uploading them to FEMA. Counter drug, we have assisted with that. And then in transportation, take the COVID pandemic, when the not the vaccinations, but the tests first came out. Civil Air Patrol was and still involved in transporting by air or ground those supplies from various points. We're not usually used to transport patients. There are certain remote circumstances where we can do that, but that is a very rare thing. That's left to the professionals, the ambulance companies and things like that. Any questions so far? Gives me a break from talking. Got to have fun, even though I'm talking like a squirrel. Here we go. So why does it keep flipping back? Here we go. MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding. If you learn that, you're great, because it took me a year or so as a senior member to really know what everybody was talking about when they said an MOU. I thought it was Disneyland and it was just a short version of Mickey Mouse, but I was wrong. These are memorandums or agreements that we have that with the various agencies you see listed. It's a written agreement that outlines how we're going to help each other. If there's an airplane missing, an ELT, Air Force Rescue Coordination Center, the AFRCC, will let us know, and the MOU tells us, outlines the process and how we help. FEMA, which is the next one, that's ultimately the umbrella that all these vaccine sites that we're helping at operates under. Individual, whether it's Cowlitz County, I think it's Skamania, the various sites, those local areas call us, but it's under the FEMA umbrella ultimately. Red Cross, if there's flooding, we can assist them in helping. FAA, National Weather Service, Salvation Army, Customs, DEA, state agencies. The PODs have been talking about state agencies. Cowlitz County activated my local unit, and in the Seattle area, those various departments of health or counties have activated there through CAP, have gotten us out and on the missions. Let's see if I can get this slide to move without going backwards, or 5 along. So there's 3 areas of mission qualifications. There's ground and urban direction finding teams. So a ground team is traditionally, you're going out, you wind up doing line searches and things like that. You're looking for something specific. Traditionally, we talk about we're looking for an airplane. Many times you're in conjunction with our aircraft saying, go there, come here, etc. But not always. In Eastern Washington, there's a high incidence of memory care people wandering off. So we assist with missing persons. We assist with missing hikers. Then there's urban direction finding teams, again, that falls back into our more traditional. When an ELT, emergency locator transmitter, goes off, we have teams with the little helpers, and we track the radio signals. And again, it's in conjunction a lot of times with our aircraft. What you won't see in this slide deck, which is outdated in many places because it was last written in, I believe, 2004, are UASs, unmanned aerial surveillance drones in the common word. So a lot of our teams are using that. A ground team has a team leader, then there's a team member, and again, then there's the urban direction finding team. And 60-1 will be your friend in telling you how the makeup and minimum numbers. Hint, hint, test question. Air crews, there can be more than this. There are more designations, but the minimum air crew is 3. The pilot, a scanner, and observer. Anybody hazard a guess as to where a scanner sits?
Back seat behind the pilot.
Back seat behind the pilot. As the name implies, that's what they're doing. They're scanning, they're looking. Where does the observer sit? In the trunk. Yes.
On the right.
Front right. So some of the duties of this observer, do comms, do navigation, and they observe. And the mission pilot, what do they do?
They fly the plane.
That would be helpful. Mission-based personnel. Wow. Let's see. Come on. I do apologize for my mission-based personnel, since I can't seem to get that slide working very well, include operations, communications, incident commander, and who else? Logistics, administration, mission staff assistance, which is a traditional entry-level area. So how do you get qualified on your GES, your ticket into emergency services? You have to have your level 1 if you're a senior, Curry for Achievement 1 for cadets, pass the 116 test. You actually have to be a member. And then you get your CAP Form 101, which most folks print out, and you have to carry it with you to the mission, and usually you display it. You're a trainee in many areas for a while, and then you become qualified. It ranges, I believe, between 1 to 2 missions before you are, quote, qualified. You go 1 to 2 missions, mostly 2 missions, before you're qualified. How long does your certification usually last? Hint, that's a test question, possibly. 36 months, 3 years, with some exceptions. As you see here on this slide, your GES is permanent unless you go through and take the test again and pass it, then it resets your date. Transport mission pilot says here permanent unless the pilot status is revoked. If you're SAR pilot, same thing. Air ground radiologic monitor. I am actually not that familiar with that one. Now, when I was a cadet on the East Coast back in the 70s, we were taught how to decontaminate the aircraft, and the air crews were trained to go monitor radioactive clouds. I don't think we would be doing that nowadays. We know a little bit more about radiation than we did then. So, as I said before, I need to move this so I can read the slide. You have to pass the GES or obtain your GES and pass the 116 test before you can start officially training in any of the specialties. Now, the test that we're going to be talking about at the end of this class corrected to 100%. So you don't have to get them right. Whether you take this online, take a formal written test, you don't have to score 100%. You just have to correct it to 100% by the time it's over. The point of it is you don't memorize all of this necessarily, but you know you have a basic familiarization and you know where to find the information. So you can check at your local units on the training requirements. They call them ops quals. And in e-services, you can find the national task guides. Or you can, if you want a small bound one, you can order some of these for the air crews and the ground crews in Mission Base from Vanguard, a copy of the task guides. Prerequisites must be completed prior to any initial training, and familiarization and preparatory training. If you go into ops quals, you will find spots on the task guides that your commander has to approve you moving forward. So it's okay to not know how to find it, just know that you need to find it and work with your unit to get there if you don't know how to find these spots in there. Then you can go into some advanced training. There it is, participate in 2 missions. So I was probably wrong when I said some say 1. And again, I talked about the unit commander authorizes you and approves you to train. And once you start training, here's something to remember. You have to get it signed off within 2 years, or you have to start from scratch in most cases. So it may take a bit of time to get all the little check boxes and ops quals and tasks done to move forward, but you need to complete it within 2 years. And you can't just have anybody sign you off. All the training must be certified as complete by a qualified evaluator. And it's the set. You'll hear it talked about a lot in Civil Air Patrol as they have a black diamond. That means they are certified to be an evaluator and sign you off on those tasks in that specialty. I am an MSA Black Diamond. I'm a UDF Black Diamond. I'm an MRO. No, I'm not an MRO yet. But I cannot sign you off for communications unit leader or an air crew. I'm not certified to evaluate you in those areas. So you have to work with people who are authorized with their Black Diamond. So again, we talked about partner agencies, and this one's a little more colorful. We partner a lot with FEMA and the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center, but NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, if there's an aircraft incident, they're the ones coming in to investigate it, so we partner with them. And the Air Force National Security Emergency Prep, I'm not as familiar with that one. The other 3, in my experience, I've worked with them quite a bit. This is key. Remember I said we can't just go show up at a car accident or whatever and say, we're here to help, I'm from Civil Air Patrol. We don't activate ourselves. However, there is a few exceptions to that. In the Cap Wing, an incident commander is assigned when we are activated, and we go through using the wing notification, roster, pager, website, whatever the wing has designated as their activation method. Right into your unit should have an activation. Can anybody tell me how often the notification rosters should be reviewed and updated? No takers, you can unmute. I can't see the pictures. 1 year. So mission qualified wing members answer the call. And then when you answer the call, when you sign in, you need to know or show what your mission qualifications are. And then they can assign you accordingly. And again, keep in mind that the slide deck was made in 2004 and we were heavy into paper. Now with electronics, internet, hotspots, we have e-services, the ops quals. WIMers, we can look up individuals' qualifications quite easily. But when you bring your 101 card, it lists everything you're qualified in and your status, whether you're a black diamond, regular certification, or in training kind of thing. Sign-ins. As you go into emergency services, we are in the IC incident command structures through FEMA. So there's a lot of forms you'll hear thrown around. Personnel and vehicles will get logged in on forms 211 and 218. Personnel sign in on a form 214. And in many places, like the local CALETs, we have a sign-in sheet for our CAP team, but we all also have to sign in on the site roster as well. So it's a double sign in and a double sign out in some cases. But that way they know who you are, where you are, where you're from, and your qualifications. Then you get sub-assigned. This is what one of the forms looks like on a check-in list. To be honest with you, this doesn't look like any form that I've seen recently, but I also am not flight crew, so this is the 218. Risks, safety. What CAP members are safety officers?
All of them, sir.
Correct answer. Thank you. So you have risks traveling to and from the mission base. If you're awakened in the middle of the night, you have grogginess. There could be weather. Leaving a mission base, if it's been a long day, fatigue as well. So you need to take these factors into consideration. Or nourishment. You can get hangry at some point. A lot of our incident command posts and other locations will put up temporary antennas. The incident command posts will have power cables, extension cords on the floor, and other slips, trips, and falls. That's a favorite phrase in our safety briefs, slips, trips, and falls. Turning propellers. We're an aviation organization and we're around airplanes a lot. And now that we have UAS, those have spinning propellers as well. Don't take unnecessary risks. Safety first, take care, be safe, then move on. Don't get in a hurry because of a perceived urgency. Safety is our #1 priority. Hopefully no one would argue with that. How are we doing, everybody? I can't see the videos, the pictures and everything. So is everybody doing okay? Am I too fast, too slow?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, there's a whole litany of regulations to read. For the purposes of this class, Regulation 60-3 and then 173-3. And I'm going to go through those documents in a bit here. It's important to know we wear a uniform, we're on an emergency mission, but we are just like every average citizen. We don't have special rights. We can't speed. We can't break traffic laws. We cannot arrest people, detain people, trespass. We are ordinary citizens helping other citizens. So that's a long-winded way of saying don't do it or you'll get in trouble. If you break the law under the mistaken guise that you're on a rescue mission, gives you the right and capability of doing it, you're subject to the laws and the policies, whether it's a restraining action or being charged for speeding, so to speak. Bloodborne pathogens. We've heard a lot about that in COVID. I'm a nurse by profession, so this is second nature to me. Diseases are transferred by contact with human blood and body fluids. Somebody sneezes, you have cuts, they bleed, somebody throws up and you're cleaning it. There's blood and body fluids. You can get hepatitis B, AIDS, coronavirus. Lots of diseases are transferred that way. But basic, simple precautions will help prevent the transmission. Can anybody hazard a guess what the number one tool and step to preventing the transfer of disease is?
Hand washing?
Yes, perfect. I was hoping that would be a quick response. Hand wash, hand wash, hand wash, sanitize, sanitize, sanitize. If you have to handle blood or body fluids, wear gloves, something impervious. We already all carry masks, and eye protection is very important as well. But the number one device is hand washing. Hand sanitization is good, but good soap and water, a mechanical wash, is absolutely the best mechanism. Exposure exists at accident and crash sites. Absolutely. If you get to any kind of accident, car, aircraft, slip, trip, and fall, there can be blood. If something goes bump in the night, whether it's a plane crash or anything, there's things where they're not supposed to be. There's sharp, jagged things. You walk through the forest and you get cut by a bramble bush. That in and of itself won't expose you, but it opens up your skin and you have a cut where the pathogens can go. I could wax on poetic on this forever. It might be a good thing that I can't see people's faces. So stay away from blood and body fluids. Hand wash. Engineering controls is one of the steps in Bloodborne. So you should have hand washing facilities, eye wash stations if you're going to be exposed to chemicals and things along those lines. Those are engineering or physical things to help prevent transmission through pathogens. Work practice controls using sharps containers, hand washing, barriers, which include masks, gowns, gloves, which on your PPE, all the above. And then treat all blood and body fluids as if contaminated. Negligence is an important thing to consider. It's failure to exercise the degree of care that a reasonable person would exercise under the same circumstances. And it can be slight, ordinary, or gross. Gross meaning huge. So the key is perform to your level of training. If, for an example, if a cadet comes up on someone having a heart attack and watches them do it, but have not had CPR training, and they did nothing other than call 911, would that cadet be negligent?
As a minor, I don't think you could hold them responsible. I don't know for sure.
Good point. So let me flip that over to an 18-year-old, same scenario. You don't have CPR training. You see someone having a heart attack. So other than calling 911, you do nothing and the individual dies. Is that person, that 18-year-old, in trouble?
I don't
No.
think so, because if they don't have protective equipment for that, for helping that person, that could be detrimental to them.
That's also true. But the key point here is you perform to your level of training. They're not trained. Therefore, they will not be held negligent or liable for it. Now, same scenario. I, as a licensed nurse with CPR training, stand there and say, I'm off duty, I don't do anything, and they die. Would I be negligent and held liable?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Okay.
If a person who does not have training for CPR performs CPR and let's say they break a rib or something in the process, are they held responsible for something like
I would think no, and I can tell you even with training, you will occasionally break a rib. At the very least, you will break the cartilage. But you should not be held liable for it, but you would be open to being held liable because you are exceeding the level of your training.
Thank
you. Uh-huh. So,
Could you go back and hit that Good Samaritan law? It was just on that last one. If
maybe.
you can, without going back, you can just talk about it.
So Good Samaritan law
Thank you.
is sums up basically what we were just talking about. Good Samaritan law says that if you make a good faith effort to help someone in whatever the scenario is, up to your level of training, you can't be sued or held liable. Do you know any additional details on that one, Colonel Maxwell?
No, sir. I just thought that actually came into answering that previous question.
Yes.
I-
That kind of is the bucket, and thank you for pointing that out.
Some of those laws vary by state.
Very true. Very true. So, posse, I'm going to butcher it, comitatus. We can't be pretend law enforcement. We can do reconnaissance of property or transport of personnel or equipment while on an Air Force mission, but we cannot engage in law enforcement activities. We do not have the right to trespass on private property. We must ask permission before we move on to it. Certain rules and regulations vary from location to location, but just understand, because we are on an Air Force sponsored mission, we're wearing a United States Air Force uniform or a Civil Air Patrol uniform, we are not police. We are not fire. We are not EMS. We are not the ambulance crews. So things we see them doing, we can't necessarily emulate. We cannot carry firearms, assist or participate in detention or arrest of persons, or seize property or conduct surveillance of personnel. So, can somebody tell me the difference between reconnaissance and surveillance? This is going to be important later.
Reconnaissance is of like an area versus surveillance is of people.
Correct. You are observing a spot. You are watching a crash site. You are watching something and just making note and or reporting on what's going on, versus you are specifically targeting the green truck or the male in the orange sweatshirt and reporting. Those are the differences in that. This will be an important distinction later. We may not be deputized, even if they're willing to deputize us, we cannot be. And again, no authority to restrict persons by force. We may provide passive assistance to law enforcement. And we can do passive site surveillance for the National Transportation Safety Board. We cannot trespass, and no special dispensations. This is our national policy, and the local sheriff can't say, that's okay, I'll cover you. Or, yeah, that's my neighbor, I'm sure he'll be okay with you going onto his property. Can anybody tell me why we have to control the information that we have access to? Why is that important?
Privacy laws.
Maybe classified.
Could be classified, privacy laws, anything else?
You don't want to, if there's any media inquiries, it needs to go to the PAO.
Correct.
To be, you have to be very careful or guarded about what we say, because we don't want to bring in looky-loos and such and create more problems.
Exactly. If you, in your ICUT and then in other areas, there's OPSEC, operational security, where on the radio we're not able to say, Colonel Wiggs, come over to 1239 South Jones Street, kind of thing. We don't put that stuff out there. Oh, please call me at ABCD number, because anybody could hear that. If it's in the case of a mission where we're looking for a missing person or an airplane, we want the family to hear the details through the appropriate channels versus on the channel of the 6 o'clock news. Also, if we go out and on a mission, we're gathering clues and sorting through it. If you watch any of the crime dramas as well, you'll hear a comment, well, this potential copycat crime has some details we did not release to the public. Same thing with us. If we tell the public, you know, certain details as we're sorting through the clues, it will get muddied because they know, pre-populate it and say, I saw the orange Bonanza at 222 coming over from north to south, kind of thing, versus when you're doing a door-to-door and things along those lines. Did you see or hear anything unusual in the last day or two? And then you follow the trail down. So that just helps down the road. And as someone just said, anybody that has a question, only the incident commander and the PIO can release details. That way there's a tight control on what's been released, and we know what has been released and what we shouldn't. It, as I said, details influence witness interviews, undue speculation, and again, the family needs to know first. The unfortunate cancellation of Cascade Falcon, we tried very hard to notify the cadet staff before it went out on the general announcement. Same kind of logic. They have the right to hear it first instead of on the billboard. You can answer general questions about CAP and who you are, but you should be facilitating people. This is especially important for mission pace folks. You should not discuss the target description or the events, the search or the results, give opinions, or be rude or bossy. Kill them with kindness. If they're get a little confrontational or pushy, get the PIO, the information officer, and hand them off. Never say no comment, just direct them to the appropriate leader. For some reason, no comment does not go over well. You should be friendly and courteous, kill them with kindness. You are a CAP member, direct them to the, there's a theme there, direct them to the person responsible for media, and be alert for information that bystanders may have. Be careful where you talk about it. Somebody might be right around the corner hearing it. Limited reimbursement is available on Air Force missions. Flight hours, some member-owned aircraft maintenance, communications, vehicle fuel and oil. Equipment and personnel must be properly signed in for reimbursement, and you turn in one of those inevitable forms, CAP Form 108. You will find that Civil Air Patrol, bureaucracies, search and rescue, and the military live on forms. Incident Command System provides a common terminology with titles and supports. You can go anywhere, whether it's in Louisiana, Washington, Puerto Rico. Logistics is logistics, communications is communications, and the titles are the same. How big those jobs are changes, so it limits the span of control and starts breaking it down so any individual is not responsible for too many people, has unity of command, and it's a unified command. And one of the things that's very hard for people to remember is just because you're the boss, if you're not qualified, somebody lower than you can be in the job. I'm a lieutenant colonel, but I'm not qualified to be a communications unit leader. I'm in training. So I have to listen and follow the directions of the captain or the major that is the communications unit leader. My rank has nothing to do with it. It's my qualifications, and that's the right thing to do. In the civilian world, it's very common for, well, I'm the manager of this department, but they're not qualified to hold the position. So just keep that in mind. And it's used to ICS, Incident Command System, is used to manage emergency and non-emergency events. Works well for both small and large. It can go anything from a single car accident on the road to a multi-state, we have an earthquake kind of thing, Hurricane Katrina, and it's very, very flexible. There are a lot, as you progress in Civil Air Patrol emergency services, you will have the opportunity and need to take a number of FEMA classes, Federal Emergency Management Agency classes that will explain more and more and more about the ICS system.
Colonel Wiggs?
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we originally and currently probably still do try to manage WAMA using the ICS system or a version of it.
True. Absolutely true.
It's totally a management tool.
It is. And it's hospitals use it. Obviously police, fire, utility unit, military uses it. It is in use in many, many, many aspects. And that's just a summary statement of basically what we said. You can have, in an ICS command, you can have public works working on restoring water. You can have fire assisting with evacuation or dealing with fires or along those lines. The gas company working on it. Police with crowd control. Red Cross with victim or displaced person relief. All sorts of flexibilities, but everybody talks a common language. If you have a huge span of control, you're very ineffective. You cannot make decisions if you're trying to do something on the left. You're trying to manage, what is that, 2, 4, 6, maybe 7? Whereas if you're the boss and you have 3 people reporting to you, and then they have 2 people reporting to them. Everyone has a manageable span of control. Think of if you were an encampment cadet commander, but you had no squadron commanders and subordinates. You had to go from there. It would be a world of hurt. Then each supervisor has people reporting to them. The maximum recommended is 5 people reporting to 1. And depending on which branch you're in and situation, the titles will change. You will also see lots of different colored vests with different, and the titles of the people on the vests. Unity of command provides a clear line of supervision, and chain of command is the orderly ranking of the management positions. A cadet in a flight reports to their element leader, then flight sergeant, flight commander on up. Very comparable thought process in an incident command and emergency services. And you follow that chain of command. So a note, do not combine organizational units. You can't do, for example, you don't really want your communications unit leader to be in charge of operations. You just cannot mix the two. There are some things that you can combine and collapse, but you have to be very careful. This will make more sense as you progress in your careers. And this is mostly directed at cadets because I know we had a number of people sign up that already have their GESs. So I'm speaking things you already know. And if you have a correction for me, those of you that already have your GES or clarification, please speak up. I do not profess to be an expert.
But this is a lot like saying you could be a flight sergeant and be the supply sergeant in your unit, but you wouldn't put flight and supply in the same box or the same.
Correct.
Right. You'd have your name underneath both those duties.
Yes. So some of the common terms that you're going to see, and even this is a little outdated because it's changed, but you have position titles, support titles, there's organizational levels. Think of it in terms of Civil Air Patrol. Organizational level, you have squadrons, you have groups, you have wings, you have regions, you have national. It's the same thing in the ICS world. You have different resource types and conditions, you have different facilities. An incident commander, command staff, section chief, divisions and groups, strike team, unit, and a single resource. Those are some of the titles you're going to start to learn and get used to. And that's why we try and practice, some units try and practice ICS command posts a lot. If you're not exposed to this a lot, it will take a while to get used to it. But these are some of the terms that are coming up. So you have an incident commander, and they're the boss of it all. Then you've got the chaplain, information, safety, and liaisons report up through there. And you also have your operations, logistics, planning. You can't do a mission without planning it. You can't do an encampment without having it planned. But once you have it planned, operations makes it run on a day-to-day basis. Logistics makes sure that you have the people, the equipment. You know, those people are going to get hungry, so you got to make sure it gets there. Finance and administration. Stuff needs to get paid for. We need to know who we've got, and they get the appropriate credit for having participated. All sorts of moving parts. So a branch is a multidiscipline or multi-jurisdictional team, and that helps facilitation of the span of control. A division or group is geographical areas. When we're running a mission, in Civil Air Patrol. If there's an east side function and a west side, then those would be more accurately a division or a group because they're in a geographic area. And it's just easier for span of control to have them grouped together. And this is what I talked about before. Just because you have the rank or you're a manager or whatever, if someone that is more qualified presents, then they should take command. It's not based on your, like I said, the grade, or you're a manager or director of a VP. It's the most qualified should take it, and so that you can get a break as well. And personnel turnover, when talking about long incidences. Okay. Resource types. A single resource includes personnel and equipment. So you see the fire trucks, the bulldozer, and the police car. A strike team is a combination of the same kind and type. So you've got the resource, which includes what we just saw on this screen. Let me back up. Single resource is the police car. A task force combines. I turned it all into a task force earlier. And a strike team is a whole bunch of the same. When Katrina hit, the local EMS company, AMR, put together a huge strike team, 40 or 50 ambulances convoyed across the country as a strike team to assist with Katrina. So there's 3 conditions of your resources. They're available. You can dispatch them to go do something. A ground team, a UDF, an airplane, or in this case, an ambulance. Once you've sent them to do something, they still exist, but they're assigned. As far as we're concerned, you can't use them. You might have to reassign them. Then they're out of service if they're down for maintenance, for food, for rest. They exist, but they can't be used just yet for a variety of reasons. We have all sorts of things. Incident command post, that's the brains. Staging area is where you group. Oh, here we go. There we go. Staging areas, bases, camps, helibase and helispots, and I honestly can't remember the difference between a helibase is permanent, and a helispot is a cleared LZ where they might be staged per se. Life flight, for example, when you're driving through the mountains to the coast, they have designated landing zones that could be considered a helispot for the rotors to come in at. Managing an incident under a unified command, it's ABC. You've got unified command of 3 jurisdictions working over one spot. One incident command post, single coordinated incident action plan. In other words, each little group doesn't come up with their own plan. It's one plan the entire team is working under. And one operations section chief, an officer in charge or supervisor. Again, because Cowlitz County is working with Clark County and I forget the next county. If you've got 3 counties working together, one person is in charge over all 3. And here are the million of regulations to look at. You don't need to memorize these, but these are good ones to look at, be familiar, know. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with 173.3. For those of you that drive and put gas in the vehicles and things, that's an important one. 60-3 gives a lot of the meat and potatoes of what I've been talking about. If there's an accident, 62-2 is mishap reporting and investigation. All of these pertain to search and rescue, emergency services, and many other aspects of Civil Air Patrol. The important takeaway for this screen is know where to find these on the national website under regulations and cap regs and things like that. Know where to find it, be able to get in and look at it and reference. Look at it and verify. And you look at some of these things enough, you'll know it. They'll be memorized. But they change, so it never hurts to go back and refresh.
I have a question.
And I might possibly have an answer.
If somehow in a natural disaster, for example, the internet goes down or something, I mean, I would normally go to the internet to find those regulations, but when you're on a command post or whatever, a team that's going to respond, if you need to know a regulation specific and the internet is not available, do they have like books of regulations that they just take with them, or how does it work?
You can. I know that our ICP team has them on thumb drives, and certain ones I have printed copies out that I keep per se, but that is good disaster preparedness. That's a very good point. And you're right. Some of the things that we are in Civil Air Patrol training for at the request of the Air Force are calm-out exercises where we have to initiate our emergency services with the internet down, cell phones down, phones down. Exactly what you're saying. And we have to rely on radios to activate our staff. Now, keeping that in mind, if we had that situation and we got the radios to activate, we got the radio call to activate and pull together a team, okay, let's alert our people. How do you do that? Do you know where everybody lives? Can't look it up in e-services. Have you thought about how you're going to get there if you're going to drive, get there? Many of us have to drive over or under overpasses where if it was an earthquake, they might be down. How are you going to get from point A to point B?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Long-winded answer, I know. All right, let me bring up something else here. And speaking of regulations, here is 60-3. This will be your friend. It will go through, it's long-winded. And this we're going to have to bear with. Apparently I'm getting a little lag time here. So general things, general policies. In the scope, what is 60-3? It's the regulation that outlines various CAP operational missions and establishes the foundation of going into the ICS components. Supplements and waivers. Here's an important question. If you see 1-2 here, just picking out some things to share with you to pull out of here. Can I, as a squadron commander, add a supplement or a waiver to this regulation if you read that section? In other words, can I make changes to this regulation to fit my squadron? No, I cannot. Only wing level with The exception of congressional squadrons can do that. And even the wing commanders changes have to have the approval of region. And I think as you go through this regulation, you're going to see my point in that this is a lot of minutia that you can't memorize, but you need to become familiar with. So what is an ops qual? Let's see if I can find that. OpsQual is the CAP website used to document all the operations related training and qualifications. I urge each of you, especially if you haven't been in there, go in and look. If you don't know too much about it, explore, get with someone from your unit to help you find the different ones. Again, Mission Staff Assistant, MSA, is the most frequent entry level for cadets to get into emergency services. Mission Radio Operator is another good one that I'm personally fond of. Qualified meets, if you're qualified, you meet all the requirements of the assignment. And if you're a pilot, Regulation 60-1 has a bit more on that. So if
Colonel Wiggs, that's changed though, right? That's not the right reg number.
correct, remember this is a little, even this reg, I'm pulling it directly off national.
Right. That would get you cadet programs.
Yes, that's right. The 60s are cadet programs now, so they need to update this.
Probably a 70-1.
Probably. So here's an important one. If we get conflicting requests, who has priority over Civil Air Patrol services?
The Air Force?
Yes,
They're our governing body.
absolutely. We're an auxiliary, and they have the priority for using us, as opposed to if it was not that I'm aware of this happening very often, but if you get your local agencies asking for your support and the Air Force is standing us up for something, Air Force has priority over our resources. This will be important in just a few minutes for this.
Okay, so I got a question. If this 60-3 is out of date, and we take the test, whether it's updated and the 60-3 is not, would not be helpful. But even if the test and the 60-3 match and we pass and the information is out of date, when are we going to get the updated reg?
Okay, the reg is updated. The reference it made to another regulation hasn't been updated.
Okay.
So when you are ever taking a course in a class, whether it's in Civil Air Patrol or not, the test is based on the materials presented. So you answer based on the materials presented. So if the question was, what governs pilots, and it says 60-1, for the purposes of the test, that's what you would do.
Okay. I have sort of a related question, but not exactly. There's a task training guide for air crew, ground crew, etc.
Yes.
I know for a fact those have been updated. One of our senior members went to, I think NISA, is it, and brought back an air crew pamphlet or task guide that was dated, I think it was 2015 or 2017 or something like that. But the ones that are available on Vanguard are back to like 2005. And so I was wondering if it's a matter of printing costs. Could we petition National to take an order for everybody who would like an updated copy, and then print and pay up front and print an updated copy of that so that we can get one?
That's a good question. I wasn't aware that NISA had a 2015.
Well, I'm not, don't quote me on that date. It might be 2017, whatever it is, it's significantly younger than the 2005.
And I would have a host of questions surrounding that. A, is it a local print and they put their date on it? And I would take, what I would do is I would take the, because I'm going to try and do that now because I have the 2005 one. And I'm
I
going to
take
go
my
on.
Colonel Phil Pearson has the copy, I believe. I believe he's the one who had the copy I looked at.
Well, and I'll talk to him, and I'm just going to refer it to what's on the electronic. Whatever you can access on electronic is reasonably the most updated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't remember how to find it.
We can probably talk offline on
Okay,
that.
that'd be great. Thank you.
It's a little convoluted, but you can get there. You
Well,
can
I
go
do
in and
remember, I thought about printing it myself, but it would take so much paper and so much ink. It's really not cost effective for me. So that's why I was thinking if a lot of people across the nation wanted one, maybe it would be cost effective if we could get a designated printed copy. That's just my thought.
yeah, I would explore it a little bit more. We can talk a little bit more offline on that one. So in moving through this, let's go back up. Here's another one. I talked about how often do you update an alert roster?
I would think at least annually, or when somebody makes a change and they notify you.
Correct. Annually is how often they should be done. A training plan for annual operations training has to be developed every year. This is in 1-7 here. How often or when is that submitted? If you take a look, it has to be submitted via WMRs, updated in WMRs by the 31st of July for the following fiscal year. Are cadets allowed on missions?
Yes, only with certain amounts of other adult members, I would think.
Yes. Do they qualify? Do we have a different set of qualifications for cadets versus senior members?
I would guess yes.
You would guess wrong. If you look at E on the screen, is encouraged. Cadets should be trained in the various functions and qualify no differently than the adult members in emergency services quals, and can be.
I've seen some very highly qualified cadet radio operators.
Yes, absolutely. And there's some restrictions on Air Force missions. We obviously, or I believe, cannot put cadets in the air. If we are doing private, like the Cowlitz County or the PODs, we can use cadets, have used cadets. Luckily, Cowlitz specifically wrote in there that cadets were in their request to Washington Wing. They specifically said cadets, supervised cadets are welcome.
I may be wrong, but I believe cadets can fly on Air Force missions if they're over 18.
I believe you are correct, but there's a lot of rumor, counter rumor. So in here, what is an IC?
Incident command or
Incident commander. Correct. Now, they're ultimately responsible for everything, correct?
Right.
Okay. Are they responsible for entering all the information in?
I
No.
would suspect not.
That is correct. They're responsible for the accuracy. They're responsible for it going in, but they don't have to key it all in. Airborne reconnaissance and delivery of imagery. We do a lot of that. If there's an earthquake, we get tasked to take pictures of the dams to see their integrity and the bridges to see what kind of debris is jamming up. I can't remember which federal agency has them tasked to take photo reconnaissance up and down the Columbia, taking pictures of the cormorant birds. And that gives them an idea of what the impact on the salmon runs are going to be. So there's all sorts of missions that require or involve taking photos. So just because we take a picture is the question, do we have to upload it? The answer is no. So what's a typical aircrew made of? We talked about that earlier.
Pilot, a spotter, and a scanner.
Okay, close. Pilot, observer, scanner. So can a ground team go out without a leader?
No.
I think I heard someone answer and I thought I heard no.
Yeah, I did say no, but that's again.
Okay, good. And that is correct. So when a ground team deploys, what's the highest level of function that they can do? Whatever the ground team leader's quals are or the trainees. What are the limits on any team that's deployed? No
Well,
team.
you said earlier that whatever they do can't exceed their training. So
Very good. No chain or team is stronger than its weakest length. So if you follow that, you only take missions within the limits of the training of its lowest member. You can have a supervised trainee that can bring up the level. Does that make sense? In other words, you can have a trainee, but they have to be directly supervised or it limits it down. What are the numbers of, go ahead.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So if you have a supervised trainee, you can perform the functions of the least trained person who is not a trainee. Is that right?
Yes. So carry that thought just a touch farther. You got one person who's qualified to supervise trainees, but you've got 3 trainees.
Well, then I would think that you could only operate as far as what the person who is supervising the trainees could do. Is that right?
Think of span of control. Can you adequately supervise 3 people in a field situation?
Well, I don't know. I thought earlier you had said 5 was max.
Actually, in this case, I'm mixing apples and oranges with that. If you're training someone, you have to have a tighter focus, and my comfort level would be a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 trainee to 1 supervisor, 1 black diamond.
Thank you.
You bet.
And I think we're also talking ground teams 3, 2, and 1.
Yes.
And that goes by how they're trained. Like they have a 24-hour pack, they have a 48-hour pack, they have a 72-hour pack.
Correct.
And they're trained for that kind of length of mission. So in that case, you'd have to go back and do the level 3, which is only the 24-hour pack.
Exactly. So your typical ground team, you have to have a ground team leader. How many other people have to be on a ground team for them to deploy? For a ground team.
At least 3, right?
At least 3 others, total of 4.
I had to go get my charging cord. My computer was about to die. You said there was a one-on-one training situation. Well, I missed what the question had been.
We're getting crunched on time. so
Okay, all right,
circle
I
back
understand.
and
Sure.
catch up. So a ground team, then a DF team should have a minimum of how many people? Hint, hint, hint.
5. The basic 4 plus the direction finder.
If it's just a DF team, it's not released with less than 2 people. Certs will not be dispatched with less than 3.
So urban, they pretty much stay in the van or the
Yeah.
vehicle.
Pretty much.
They don't go tramping through the woods and stuff. But the ground team does.
So there is one exception. When we said we don't self-deploy, there is one exception to that, the C911. Imminently serious missions, the wing commander designee launches an aircraft or sends them out with the understanding that there is limited insurance coverage. In order to activate a C911 mission, the responsible state or local government official must request a CAP assistance. Imminently serious missions will only be used to save lives, relieve human suffering, or mitigate great property damage. Honestly, I don't see this in this modern world happening because the knock gets back to us really quick with authorizations on missions. I haven't seen much of a backlog on that. So that is a huge chunk of 60-3. And this will be your reference guide. Even the stuff that we've gone over is probably muddling around in there. I urge you, even if you read it prior to the class, to go back through it. And any questions for me so far? If not, we're going to launch into a test.